Fasting does something strange to the mind. It strips away noise. With no food to chase and fewer distractions to anchor the day, your focus begins to shift inward. And for those holding their seed, this quiet brings clarity. Fasting pulls energy away from digestion and redirects it toward recalibration. Hormones shift, growth hormone rises, insulin drops. The body begins recognizing restraint, not as punishment but as command. And that command whispers a message across every system. Hold, don't release. When fasting and retention are paired, the brain begins to form a new identity, one rooted not in indulgence, but in energetic preservation. Over time, the nervous system adapts. Cravings fade. Urges transform into signals of capacity. You stop chasing stimulation and start recognizing what you're capable of holding. Fasting teaches the body to survive without constant intake. Retention teaches the mind to thrive without constant release. Together they form a quiet discipline, a slow-burning fire. This balance impacts the endocrine system, behavior, and even social perception. Men who combine these two practices often describe sharper thoughts, a deeper voice, and an odd shift in presence. It's not magic, it's memory. The body remembering how it felt to be in control, not through effort, but through stillness. Section 1. Metabolic switching. When food stops coming in, the body doesn't panic. It recalibrates. It scans the internal terrain and begins switching its primary fuel from sugar to fat. This shift, called metabolic switching, doesn't just change how energy is made. It changes what kind of man you're becoming. With ketones now fueling your brain, the mind sharpens. Thought becomes cleaner, less scattered, more focused. And here's where it gets interesting. Semen produced under these conditions isn't built in a fog of sugar spikes and insulin crashes. It's formed in clarity, in efficiency. The body, running on pure signal instead of distortion, begins producing seed that carries the signature of high-performing energy. Fasting strips away the clutter. It lowers systemic inflammation, balances blood sugar, and forces the endocrine system into a lean, high-levered state. Every system tightens. Hormones become more precise. Testosterone doesn't just float, it signals. Growth hormone doesn't just rise, it repairs. The body becomes selective about what it creates, because now every output must count. That includes your semen. When retention meets fasting, the result isn't just more control, it's better output. Every drop retained is biologically cleaner, richer in nutrient profile, and energetically more stable. You're not just saving, you're storing something built under peak internal order. This kind of retention, formed during metabolic switching, carries weight. It's not just spiritual or mental, it's physiological. It alters posture, breath, even the way you hold eye contact. Men who retain during fasting report stronger presence, deeper sleep, and a strange sense of internal alignment. Not because they added something, but because they removed the noise. The fuel shift activates a feedback loop. Better energy means better production. Better production means more reason to retain. That cycle builds a foundation, not just for vitality, but for transformation. One that begins in the bloodstream, but ends in identity. Section 2. Feedback loop. When a man stops feeding his body constantly, something begins to sharpen inside him. And when he pairs that with holding in the most potent form of biological power he possesses, something rare happens. His system stops swinging wildly between sugar highs and dopamine crashes. Instead, it enters a rhythm. Fasting strips away the erratic spikes in insulin and cortisol, which are notorious for disrupting testosterone. At the same time, semen retention reduces prolactin, the hormone responsible for draining masculine drive. These two forces combine to form a loop, where the body rewards stillness with stability, hormones stop reacting and start regulating. The fog lifts. This clarity isn't just mental, it's mechanical. The endocrine system begins responding to the body's needs with precision. Instead of being dragged around by cravings, urges, or mood dips, the system starts generating its own baseline of energy. Testosterone stops rising and falling based on food or orgasm. It steadies. That consistency creates a psychological shift. You don't wake up wondering who you'll be today. You know, confidence emerges not from hope, but from regulation. Your biology becomes something you can rely on. And that reliability starts to reflect in how you walk, speak, and make decisions. Retention without fasting is powerful, but retention with fasting creates a furnace. The body isn't just saving, it's refining. Every time the brain gets a clean energy signal from fasting, and every time it doesn't have to reset from another dopamine crash, it gets stronger at self-regulation. Dopamine becomes more rewarding. Testosterone becomes more functional, estrogen stops tipping the scale, and that loop doesn't stop. The more stable you become, the easier it is to stay stable. The feedback is internal, and it keeps amplifying the very traits that build strength, ambition, and focus. Men who build this loop report something hard to explain. It feels like they're not just alive, they're aligned. Retention gives the body raw energy. Fasting makes that energy clean. And the feedback loop is what keeps the mind clear enough to handle the power that follows. This is where discipline becomes instinct, and instinct becomes presence. Not because you're forcing anything, but because your body finally stopped working against itself. In a world of overconsumption and overstimulation, this loop isn't just uncommon, it's sacred. Section 3. Inner control. Most people don't realize how loud the body can be until they try telling it no. When you fast, even for a short time, you face that noise, those signals screaming for sugar, comfort, distraction. But something remarkable happens when you stay calm through it. The mind begins to watch itself. The cravings lose power. The longer you hold the line, the more your brain shifts from chasing relief to commanding direction. This isn't just about food. It's about control. And when you combine this with semen retention, you're no longer avoiding indulgence. You're training your brain to transcend it. You learn to say, "Not now," without feeling like you're missing anything. This level of discipline does something rare to the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center. Every act of restraint strengthens its function. It becomes easier to focus, easier to plan, and easier to hold long-term goals in view without being derailed. The emotional chaos that once came from urges or setbacks quiets down. You become harder to sway. Retention trains the body to hold its power. Fasting trains the mind to hold its direction. And together, they form a new rhythm of thought, one that doesn't bend under pressure because it's no longer ruled by it. This is how men develop the ability to act with calm, even in chaos. Over time, a subtle shift occurs. You stop arguing with yourself. You stop making deals with your lower nature. You move without asking for permission. Decisions feel cleaner. Goals feel sharper. The mental noise turns into stillness, and in that stillness, action becomes effortless. You start trusting yourself, not because you've convinced yourself with affirmations, but because you've seen yourself stand firm when it mattered. And that self-trust begins to spread into how you walk, how you work, how you lead. This isn't about willpower anymore. It's about alignment. You no longer need force because your direction is built into your nervous system.